Thank you, everybody. First on our agenda tonight is an appointment. We have Jim Richmond, Commander, American Legion, Post 140, looking for an approval of the following items to see if the town would proclaim August 5th, Oscar Smith Mitchell Day in the town of Hull, and also to see if the town would approve the Oscar Smith Mitchell American Legion Post 140 rededication to Oscar Smith Mitchell's grave at the Hull Village Cemetery on August 5th, 2023 at 12 p.m., immediately followed by a celebration event held at the Life Saving Museum. So Jim, it's all you.
Jim Richmond, 55 A Street, Commander of Oscar Smith Mitchell, Post 140. We have this event coming up August 5th. Hull Village, 24 members of Oscar Smith Mitchell's families coming down from Maine, direct descendants of Oscar Smith Mitchell. There will be full military honors, and there'll be a celebration of Oscar Smith's life after the ceremony up at the cemetery, rededicating his gravesite. Since the start of the Legion, which has been less than a year, the Legion's been very active. They still do the Veterans Coffees every first Friday of the month. That's where veterans come from all over the South Shore, and they get valuable information about benefits and new legislation. The Hull Coffee is the most attended on the South Shore. Between Weymouth, Hingham, anywhere else, more people come to the Hull Coffee than any other veterans coffee. The second Thursday of the month, the Post takes part in the free Veterans Food Drive at WATD Studios. We feed veterans, but we've opened it up to everybody since COVID. So we take part in that. We're also this Saturday, July 22nd, the Post is helping out at the Veterans Music Festival and Resource Fair in Quincy at Pageant Field. There'll be 125 booths of information from healthcare to VA benefits to Parkinson's disease to dementia. There's free food, music. It's from 9 to 2. And then the Legion will be teaming up with with Craig Wolf and the Rotary to put another car show on September 17th. And that one, that benefits cops with kids with cancer. The Post is also in the process of setting up a scholarship fund in the name of the late Butchie Neal. We're still working out some details, but we'll keep you posted on that. We're working with the family to do that, but we're just hitting a couple snags. Also, doing this for the first year, we've teamed up with Daly and Wanza to do Wreaths Across America this year. That brings holiday wreaths to veterans' graves at the holiday time. And we'll be looking for donations for that. Cost of a wreath is $17. We have a QR code which makes it easier. And remember to pick the Hull Village. Right now we're in the middle of our calendar drive. We've started picking names. We give out $25, $50 a day for the month of July. We're in the middle of that, and you can find the winners of that on our website or on Facebook. Then the last thing we have is, this is our first time we've been back since town meeting. Post 140 would like to know where we stand as far as the policy on building use. Is there a timetable? And what is the next steps in finding a home for the Legion?
Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you for what the American Legion is doing. That's a lot of good things that they do for the community. I have a question. Do you need anything from the town for these events on that day?
We are pretty much all set for Oscar Smith Mitchell Day. They're bringing the bugler and the guns to do the 21 gun salute, so full military honors for Oscar Smith Mitchell. If I don't know if anyone got an invitation. I know I got Jason's coming. If anyone would like to speak at the event, just let me know. Like I said, there are 24 of his closest descendants coming from Maine, so we're going to try to make it an interesting day for them.
Okay, and your last question, We are gonna work on that. We are waiting till the town manager gets set in place,
Okay,
because it should be done together.
okay.
All right? Anybody have any questions, comments? Jerry?
Just a comment, really cool event. I will definitely plan on attending. Thank you for having it on a Saturday, for those of us that work Monday through Friday. There was a recent event I was hoping to get to, couldn't get to. A friend of mine was honored there, I think, so good stuff. And like I said, the 5th sounds really like something that we should attend, so I will plan on being there.
Thank you.
Erwin?
First, Jim, I'd like to thank you and everybody else at the Legion for the great work that you're doing for the town. And I'd like to make a motion that the town proclaim August 5th Oscar Smith Mitchell Day in the town of Hull.
Motion made by Erwin. Any
Seconded.
comments? Seconded by Jerry. Any comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
Is it possible to get welcome Mitchell family on that sign, the police sign?
You'd have to coordinate with that with the police
With
department.
the police department?
Okay.
In fact, just for Saturday. That'd be nice.
Okay.
Do we need a motion for the rededication too?
Yeah.
Might as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Erwin.
I'd like to make a motion that the town approve the Oscar Smith Mitchell American Legion Post 140 rededication of Oscar Smith Mitchell's grave at the Hull Village Cemetery on August 5th, 2023 at 12 p.m.
Motion made by Erwin. Anyone like to second it?
I'll second.
Second by Jason. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous once again. Thank you, best of luck. I'll be there myself too,
Thank you.
so thank you for organizing it.
Thank you.
Have a good time.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we have some approvals. Do the first one on the list, James B. Lampe, Town Council, request of exemption, certain interest in contracts from General Law, Chapter 268A, 20 for library employees assisting school department. Jim?
Yes, you all should have a copy of the memo on this. This is similar to what the board had to deal with recently for some park and rec employees who were also associated with the school department. In this instance, the school superintendent is working on some revisions to the libraries in the school system, and she needed some technical assistance. She solicited for proposals or letters of interest from people, and the library director and the children's librarian, I had him misidentified as the assistant director, but the children's librarian responded to the solicitation. They meet the qualifications that the school superintendent established, and school superintendent would like to engage their services. They're willing to do the work. Under the conflict of interest law, there's some steps that are required because in their capacity as library employees, they have a contract that's considered a contract with the town. You can only have one in contract with the town unless it falls under certain exemptions. There is an exemption for this type of a situation for personal services where there is a solicitation for them, and the parties who are selected, they need to file a disclosure with the town clerk. The school superintendent also needs to certify that she does not have any existing employees who can do this work, and the select board needs to, if they want to approve this, approve the exemption under the law, Chapter 268A, Section 20B, of the library director and the children's librarian as relates to their positions as consultants to the school department. They'll be limited to working no more than 500 hours in a calendar year. The plan is that it will be somewhere around 50 or so hours that this will take. It will be outside of their normal duties as a library employee, and they have filled out the necessary disclosure forms. The only thing left is for the Board of Select Board to approve their exemption from that statute. Something that comes coincidental, that's come up a couple of times already since since the summer started. But from time to time, something like this comes up during the course of the year, and typically the select board approves the exemption. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about it.
Thank you, Jim. With that said, are there any questions for Jim? And maybe a motion to approve as presented?
So just a question, is this, would this, it sounds like it's something similar to, say, a football coach, is a teacher, you know, it's an additional duty, additional pay, this full disclosure is made. I don't see an issue, obviously, I'm just,
Football
Similar.
coaches,
or a teacher doing, you know, taking an additional role.
Park and rec.
It's pretty typical.
yeah, it's typical in that regard. The coaching, I believe, is covered internally by the school. It's probably under their collective bargaining agreement that they get a stipend for providing coaching services. So that doesn't require the approval under the same statute, but it's similar to that.
We good?
Absolutely, yeah.
Would anyone like to make a motion to approve as presented?
I'll move to approve the exemption from General Law C-268A, Section 20B for Diane Castagliolo and Elizabeth Thompson, library employees, as relates to their positions as consultants to the school department on library matters, and authorize town council to sign on behalf of the select board a certification to this effect.
Motion made by Irwin. Anyone second it?
One second.
Second by Jerry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have Dino Finari, manager of Vitamin C Brewing LLC. Request for a 30-day liquor license on Hull Redevelopment Authority property, Hull Shore Gardens in parentheses, from Friday, July 28th, 2023, until Saturday, August 26th, 2023. Hours of operations will be 2 p.m. to 9 p.m., and this is for renewal. He's done this in the past. Dino, you have the floor, and if you could be a little more detailed, because we have 3 new board members.
Yes, Greg, thank you. Dino Finari, 17 Hillside Road. Thank you for having us back. What we're proposing is, again, for the 3rd summer, a pop-up beer garden on the property known as Hull Shore Common. Our plan would consist of offering pours of beer and seltzer and wine for on-site consumption only. Merchandise such as hats, stickers, etc. will also be available for purchase as well from our truck. No packaged alcohol will be available for to-go sales per state law. Our goal is to mimic the same taproom experience that we have at our location in Weymouth. Again, as Greg mentioned, it's for 30 contiguous days from Friday, July 28th to Saturday, August 26th. The proposed beer garden would run from the hours of 2 to 9 p.m. or dusk. Our event capacity, we're proposing a capacity of 60 people at any given time, and this is based on the history that we've compiled over the last 2 summers. We shot really high the first 2 years, and we've kind of come back to reality to see exactly what we're at. I don't even think we got close to 60 people at any given time, to be quite honest with you, so we feel very comfortable with that number. That capacity will be in addition to the event staff, people working the truck. We're anticipating 3 to 4 people to run the event, including servers and entry personnel for security. All event personnel should be tip certified, which we have the documentation for all of that. 1 person would be at the entrance, and then 1 to 2 people would be on the truck, depending on shift changes, breaks, etc. The beer and wine would be served from our direct draw tap system from our beer truck. We'll offer 4 to 6 different selections daily. I believe everyone has a copy of the package just for reference. We'll also be offering prepackaged snacks on the trucks, but we're hoping to encourage local restaurants from the town to offer delivery to the site. And what we've done is we've created a QR code, which we were pretty successful with last year, where the patrons can click on that QR code, and it will link them to a page we've set up on our website that lists out the web addresses for all of the restaurants in town that will offer delivery. So they could actually have delivery made to the site. Our security and containment plan, proposed beer garden will be surrounded with snow fence barricading, with 1 area that will be the point of entry, which again will have a staff member at that point of entry. Patrons that are 21 plus will be ID'd at the entry and stamped with the unique brewery-specific stamp, which we rotate it changes constantly, so that way we don't have the same one every day. Upon entry, which will allow them to purchase beverages. Trash containment and disposal, we will have trash receptacles at the following locations: 2 at the beer truck itself, and then 2 at the point of entry. We will empty and remove any trash from the site on a nightly basis, and we bring that back along with the truck to our facility in Weymouth and empty it in our dumpster. As far as the restroom plan goes, I've worked with the building department, Bart Kelly, as far as the numbers that we need based on the 60 people. Nationwide Waste Service, which is our current vendor, will provide the 2 porta potties for customers to use. One will be a standard porta potty. The other one will be a handicap accessible one. I've spoken to Jason in regards to trying to pretty it up a little bit. So I think what we think we can do is put a roughly a 10 by 10 pop-up tent that we can have with 3 sides on the outside of it. So that way it won't be visible from the outside. And the doors would be directed to the inside of the beer garden, so patrons will know where they can use them, but again, it won't be visible from the outside. We'll try to dress it up a little bit. So we tried with some fabric the last few years, which was okay, but we'll see if this looks a little bit better. Parking plan, we have that only Vitamin C Brewing food and vendor staff will be allowed to park on the space so as not to conflict with the current parking vendor. I'll be honest with you, last year, Henry Dunn approached us and said, by all means, feel free, whereas at 2 p.m. when we open, most beachgoers are already at the beach, so he was amenable to have our patrons park there as well for overflow, and he's been great about that. I'll speak to him again about that, but provided there's no other issues. We don't promote it as such, but if guests do park there, we don't want to tell them to have to move if he's okay with it. And then again, they'd be required to pay in the paid lots and then public parking areas throughout the general area. And then again, there's just a simple diagram of the space which shows the layout. Also, which I didn't cover yet, we'll have the same type of tenting. We have, there are 4 10-foot by 20-foot canopied tents for shade. And we also do offer bottled water as another alternative too for the hot days. And quite honestly, again, we've been compiling historical data here for the last couple of years. The first year we were unknown. Nobody kind of knew what we were until the end of it. And it was like, oh, you're leaving already. And that was in the month of June. July, we had record heat last year, and it was just too hot. And what we found is that most people that visited were townspeople. They'd walk from the different neighborhoods in the afternoons, which was really nice. People from the beach would get in their car and they'd leave because it was just too hot. So we're going to try August this year. I'm sorry, first year was August. We're going to try August again this year, just because we're hoping that these temperatures are going to stabilize a little bit, and hopefully we can string together a few sunny days at normal temps for people to enjoy it. So.
Thank you. I have a question. It's just,
Yes.
have you ever thought of maybe some fans attached to those poles or some misting? Something?
It's a great idea. I have to see what the electric load is on it. Again, our truck is a kind of a self-contained unit. I know there was talk at one point about the HRA having an electrical point on that property, but to this day it still hasn't happened yet. So we're kind of limited on what we can do because we'd obviously love to have some lights and whatnot too for the evenings. But we can see if there's something that we can attach. We're open for any suggestion, and
Yeah, I think
we're
that
pretty
would help
flexible.
for the
Okay.
comfort level during the heat. All right, anybody else? Any questions?
One quick question. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was gonna make a quick comment in my capacity as the chief of police. I've been down there the past 2 summers, not as a customer, but working with my personnel, and we've always found it very well run. Like you spoke, there's one entrance and exit. The servicers are all tip certified, and we have not had any calls for service when they've been down for that establishment serving alcohol. So it's refreshing to know that they run it well every year.
If I could add too, Chief, it's incredible, and people don't realize this. They laugh at us when we tell them that, but beer gardens and tap rooms have become like where families go now. As crazy as it sounds, because they are pretty well open, and we're a pretty laid back environment in the sense that the kids can kind of hang out and do what they want to do. We have cornhole, and it keeps them occupied, and then obviously down there with the ice cream truck going by. That seems to be a hot ticket, but we don't get that the the other kind of crowd, which is great. It's why we close early too, even at our other location. We don't want to have to deal with it, so we take some preventative measures.
Thanks. Erwin, did you have a question?
My question for Chief Dunn was what you already answered, so thank you.
That's it. Brian?
Yeah, I'm just glad that I never knew that you were from Hull, so I always thought it was Weymouth-based, people trying to come in and, so that's great, and the food option, the plan that you have, another great idea, so.
Thank you. Yeah, our goal, and we've said this, and I'll probably tell them blue in the face, but our goal is to have a permanent home in Hull at some point, once we can find the right kind of space.
Great.
It's where it started, so it's home.
So the brew houses, he's absolutely right. I just heard this week I heard a debate on sports radio, I think, about that. And people saying, is it okay to bring your kids to that? And it is, obviously. And that's why you go there, you have a beer, you have two. It's a much richer beer, a lot more taste. It's that sort of experience as opposed to, a bar room.
It's become kind of like how wine was back in, say, the 90s and early 2000s, where people will go and try a few different ones and then bring stuff home. It's not a place where somebody sits and hangs out all day. It's just not.
So that's number one. Number two, there's been some recent proposals for open space at the HRA. Rightfully so. There's some really good proposals there that should be looked at. And you guys, in a certain way, are kind of a test run for.
We hope to become more than a test run.
And number three, I told myself I'll do this, but I should do this to everybody that comes in. But thank you for choosing Hull for opening a business, because it's not easy.
Well, first and foremost, I'm a resident, so as a taxpayer and resident, I want only the best for down here, so
Right.
we want to be part of that plan.
Great.
Commute would be a lot easier.
Yeah. Jason?
I'll just make a motion to approve the request by Dino Fenari of Vitamin C Brewing LLC regarding the request for 31-day liquor licenses on Hull Redevelopment Authority property, the portion known as Hull Shore Gardens, from Friday, July 28th, 2023 until Saturday, August 26th, 2023. Hours of operation 2 p.m. until 9 p.m.
Thank you. Motion made by Jason,
I'll second.
second by Brian. All in favor?
I just want to give a prelude to the fact that Dina will be coming back August 2nd, I believe, for a hearing on an entertainment license for 1 day at the site here, just so that you know what's coming up on this.
With that said, does he have to mail out to abutters? Are there abutters?
The notice was just finalized today, and they'll be mailing out to the abutters based on the assessor's tax list. So that will be covered.
Thanks, Jim. All right, so with that said, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, Dino.
Thank
Good
you,
luck.
Board, and congratulations and best luck to all the new members as well.
All right, take it easy.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have a request for approval from Armando Aguilar, 440 Nantasket Ave, Hull Knights of Columbus. Reason, 1-day liquor license on Saturday, August 5th, 2023, from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. for a birthday party. Anyone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Brian, second by Jerry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. And next up, Kevin Richardson, president of Hull Boosters. Reason, approval for annual Hull Boosters Beach Race / Walk on Thursday, August 3rd, 2023 at 6:30 p.m., beginning at the Mary Jeanette Murray Bathhouse to M Street and returning to Mary Jeanette Murray's Bathhouse. Any questions? Anyone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Erwin, second by Jerry. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Jim, is it okay if I read the next three and then just vote on them all?
Yes.
All right, because there's one on the added agenda, so I'll just read them all.
Just make reference to the fact that as listed on the agenda.
Yeah, okay. All right. Number 5, Mike McGurl, Executive Director of 1117 Nantasket Ave, Hull Life Saving Museum. Reason, 1-day wine and malt license on Saturday, August 5th, 2023, from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. for the Oscar Smith Mitchell Post. Then he has another request for a 1-day wine and malt license on Sunday, August 6th, 2023, from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. for volunteer appreciation. And then on our added agenda, You have a one-day wine and malt license on Saturday, July 29th, 2023, from 8 PM to 11 PM for the Hull Life Saving Museum illumination. Any questions on all three? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion made by Jerry, seconded by,
Jason, second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? Thank you. Next up, Judith E. Barry, Secretary of Green Hill Improvement Association, permission to hold Gala Day on Saturday, August 19th, 2023, from 9 AM on Gun Rock Beach. Rain date will be Sunday, August 20th, 2023. Anyone like to make a motion?
So move.
Motion made by Brian. Any discussion? Anything?
If there was any discussion, it'd be from Brian, because this is his neighborhood.
All good.
Yeah, it's a great event. It's
Here
been
it is.
ongoing for
Yeah.
years. Next year, hopefully they'll.
Been doing it for years, yeah.
All right, motion made by Brian, seconded by
Second.
Irwin. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. All right, so now we can move on to our discussion items. Continuance of the open meeting public input. All right, so where do we want to begin? Do we just want to review this like we did the last time? Or I do have a question. This is our revisions. How close is this to the suggested state guidelines? Do they-
Well, I'm not aware that there are official state
Not official yet.
guidelines, but it's, you know, it's a work in progress, and will be for some time until some of the dust is settled on the issues. But it's the original one that I submitted a few weeks ago to the board, which was based on what I thought was the best from various other sources, including the Mass Municipal Association and other cities and towns that had already an existing public comment speech. From that meeting until this was prepared, based on further research, I tweaked it a little bit more. As I mentioned in the cover memo, there was another case in the federal court that dealt with this and clarified a few things, and I imagine there'll be some more cases as we go forward on it.
Thank you, Jim. Do we want to go through this like we went through last time? Maybe Jason could read each one, we discuss it, and either approve or disapprove on each one?
Well,
Maybe just,
Go ahead.
I just have a question. Did anyone else have any issues that they pointed out with the draft that you sent over, or no?
You had made some comments
Yep.
on it, and Irwin had suggested incorporating some language to make it somewhat comparable to like a town meeting, that once you've already spoken, you can't speak again until other people have spoken, if you wanted to speak a second time. Those points and your points haven't been haven't been added to the policy, because we wanted to wait to see what the board wanted to do. There may very well be other points that you as the members of the select board may want to include or change.
Good. Jason?
I was just gonna say, instead of how we kind of went through it last time, does it make sense maybe for you to walk through it, since it's, just because, yeah, a lot's been changed, and
Sure.
and a lot of it reflected our discussion, but a lot of pieces are things that you've added since you've gotten additional guidance, and then also the points that Jerry and
I'm fine
Erwin
with
made.
Yeah, there's two operative documents. One is a clean copy, and I can make copies of the other one, which is a comparison showing the changes, sort of like a red line, although it's not in red, but showing the changes that were made from the first draft. Jason was very helpful in giving me a version he prepared based on the first meeting that we had on this a few weeks ago. So we can go through the clean copy, and I can point out where there were some changes made in it, if you'd like. Okay, so the first paragraph, substantially the same. I added in the third line about it being a limited public forum. there's different types of public forums. There's like a pure public forum, which would be a park, a sidewalk, someplace that is open to the public, generally without any restrictions. But a meeting is considered a limited public forum. So I just added that for clarification purposes. The board wanted to limit this to agenda items, so we took out the language that had the board designating a time during the meeting for members of the public to speak on matters of concern. This is written with a focus to address agenda items. We also added I added for your consideration, the last sentence in the first paragraph that just reiterates that this relates to meetings of the select board, and just reminding people that there are other means for the public to communicate on matters of concern, such as writing letters, speaking at pure public forums, etc. And this policy doesn't affect anyone's ability to do that. Just reminds people that there's more than one way to express viewpoints. In the first numbered item, there was no change other than an issue of capitalization of chair, but there's no substantive change.
Jim, I'm sorry, can we read these so that folks listening know what we're,
Yeah, just the bullet points. I think it's important that you read
Right.
them as we go.
Sure, I mean,
yeah. So read them as they are on here so we can discuss them, and
oh,
so
okay,
folks
sure.
listening will know what we're talking about as well.
Yeah. Okay, do you want me to start in the beginning and
I
read the
think,
first?
I think we should, yeah. It's
Yeah,
only,
go with
it's only a
that first.
page and a
Yeah.
half, 2
Yeah.
pages, right?
Yeah, 2 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is captioned temporary guidelines for individuals speaking at public meetings. The select board recognizes and appreciates that the comments of the public are important. This temporary policy sets forth guidelines for members of the public when addressing the select board during a limited public forum, such as a meeting. The select board may invite members of the public to comment on agenda items. The general purpose of the policy is to provide reasonable guidelines for participation by the public that allow for the select board to conduct the business of the public and the town in an orderly and efficient manner while protecting the vital tradition of commentary and feedback by the public. The policy does not affect other means for the public to communicate on matters of public concern, such as, for example, writing letters to the public and/or the select board, or communicating at pure public forums. Such letters to the select board are subject to the public records law, and the select board may or may not discuss such letters at a public meeting. The board, from time to time, just gets letters generally on different things, and the staff would typically make the chairperson aware of those letters, and depending on if the letters relate to anything on a particular item or a hearing, they would be put with the hearing file. The first guideline
So
is...
Jim, before you go too far, are we good with the first paragraph? Everybody?
Yeah, I think it's
Okay,
good.
I think we just do that as
Oh,
we go.
sure.
All right, go ahead, Jim, sorry.
Number 1, by state law, the chair of the public body is responsible for conducting all public meetings in an orderly and peaceful manner. While the right of free speech is recognized and the town welcomes comments and ideas from the public, these guidelines are designed to lead to an open and productive use of time at public meetings.
I personally like that one. I think
Yep,
it
no
doesn't
problem.
need to be tweaked at all.
Nope.
Okay. I'll read the second one, and then I'll point out where there were some changes from before. Well, the numbering is a little off.
Yeah.
on this
So you
copy
got-
here.
I think it might have been
Mine are
combining
in it.
them.
Okay. Give me 1 second, please.
If memory tells me right, we combined that one, didn't we?
Yeah, I think we
Yeah,
did.
that might be why you have it.
No,
that way,
it's,
Jim.
it's a number two. I see the red line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the,
Number two, the select board may allow comment for individual agenda items. Each speaker, other than applicants, select board members, town manager, town council, or other staff, during public comment on an agenda item shall be limited to a maximum of 2 minutes. The chair may allow a group representative more time to avoid repetitive comments from speakers.
Multiple speakers.
Then it continues, in general, extensions of time will not be permitted unless the chair, in his or her discretion, determines that there is a good reason to extend the time allotted for public comment on agenda items. Speakers who require accommodations on the basis of a speech-related disability or who require language interpretation services may be allotted a total of 5 minutes to present their material. Speakers may not assign their time to another speaker. In accordance with state law, no person may address a meeting without the permission of the chair. To maintain an orderly and peaceful meeting and accurate public records, all speakers must identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. Then, okay,
Just go,
I'll
so-
pause there.
Any questions on that paragraph?
So I just have one question about it. So, well, there's two questions about it. So we're saying, it's at the very beginning, the select board may allow. What it doesn't say is, okay, so I'm assuming that when we allow public comment specific to certain agenda items, we're making that decision when the agenda is posted in order to let people know that a certain item is open for public comment.
Right, you raise an interesting point that I was gonna bring up at some point here, and I've spoken to some people about it. You know, the agenda gets posted and it lists all the agenda items, and the board by policy is saying that there can be public comment on all the agenda items. There is language that does give the board, not an individual member, but the board, the ability to say, well, this item we're not going to have public comment on because we have a busy night with other items and we're not going to have public comment on one particular item. So mechanically, I think the board needs to discuss when do they want to decide which items. There's a presumption that from the board's vote, that a presumption that all items will allow public comment. But, do you want to have on the agenda for each item, public comment will be allowed for each item, or like a general statement that says, basically, public comment. I actually emailed, I think, some language to Jerry when he had raised a question on it. You could have a general statement on the agenda that says, for example, public comment will be allowed under the select board's temporary guidelines for individuals speaking at public meetings unless otherwise noted on an agenda or otherwise decided by the select board. So this relates to the mechanics of preparing the agenda, and quite often, because the way things come in for requests for appointment before the selectmen, the agenda generally is put together sometime on Monday or by Monday. Some things we know are gonna be on the agenda, advertised hearings, for example, like this evening, Dino's, proposal or request for approval for the 31-day licenses. So some things we know in advance, other things will not be known until Thursday or Friday or that Monday. But to meet the 48-hour requirement, an agenda is prepared on Monday based on all the available information. If something comes in that the chair, under the law, the agenda is supposed to list items which the chair reasonably anticipates will be brought up at a meeting. And as a practical matter, staff works with the chair to do that. There are times, and even tonight, you had something on an added agenda, a one-day license for the Life-Saving Museum that came in after the formal agenda, but so there's an added agenda because no one knew they wanted to do that, and just to keep moving things along and to help them with their planning, that was put on for the added agenda. So basically, you folks need to discuss and decide how you want to handle the agenda, particularly in terms of public comment. This is somewhat of a working document in progress because it's a new policy, it's new practice throughout the state. More and more communities are adopting specific policies, and I imagine that over time this will be changed. That's why it's called temporary guidelines, and the last item on it reinforces that, you know, this is likely to be amended.
Okay.
So I'm glad Jason brought that up now, but it was going to be eventually brought up in terms of how you want to handle your agenda format.
Well, I'll just go with my personal opinion. If we're gonna open it up to public comment, I think it should be across the board. I think it would be too difficult, especially with added agenda items. So that's just my thought. Jerry, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, exactly, and I'm not gonna speak for Jason, but I think we changed the word may to will.
Yeah, I was thinking the
Yeah.
same.
Select
just
board will
simplify it.
allow public comment as a rule, and that's it.
Just as someone may wanna come up here, then may is,
Yeah.
we may or may not, where will was, we will. So if
Yeah.
someone did come up here and wasn't able to speak because we decided that probably isn't a good idea or some, one reason or another, so I also had may crossed out and put in will myself, so.
Did you have
I
something?
was gonna say that also, we shouldn't be in the position of determining who can speak to
Yeah.
what, without knowing what
Do you have
what the
anything to
issues
add?
are.
No, I just would say I like Jim's point of just making sure, going forward with the agenda items, that we put, I think that language was perfect, because we should still, because people, you know, will wanna know that that they can now publicly comment, and I think we should just have that routine at the top of every agenda,
Yeah.
if you agree.
Oh, I agree.
You write
I think we all
the agenda,
agree.
but
I realize that everyone in the room here favors public comment, you know, on agenda items at the meeting. In terms of changing the word may to shall, you know, there's always a debate. Does the shall mean you must, or can may also mean you must, or does shall mean you may? And I would just suggest that changing it to shall sort of makes it a mandatory policy. And even though there's language here that says the board can suspend the policy, because you have the right to suspend any of your rules and regulations generally, I look at it not wanting to box the board in if there is some reason that you don't want to, on a particular item, have public comment. Also, item number 10, which, you know, Jerry had written me about, explains that the public comment is still a discretionary matter, and the board may omit it from a meeting agenda to prioritize time for other matters. And the board can also impose other terms and conditions. That was designed to give the board flexibility depending on circumstances. I think, given that everyone favors public comment, that more likely than not, the board will allow public comment for individual agenda items unless you've decided for some reason, or because of the scheduling of items for that meeting, that you want to defer to another night or just not have public comment on certain things. Happy to change the may to shall, but I just throw out the cautionary note that, you know, shall sometimes applies to, interpreted by people that, well, you must allow this And if you were to change it, then you're gonna be running into problems. May gives you that discretion, and then it's up to the board as to whether or not they wanna change it and allow public comment or not. And I think, given the board's sense of favoring public comment, that times where you're not going to allow public comment are gonna be few and far between, and if it gets to be a problem overall, you know, you can always change this and better address it.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Erwin, you had your hand up first?
I think it's important to go with Will, because I think it's important for us to put out the message that public comment is welcome, and that we're not going to take a position to pick and choose what people can or can't comment on. I think either we have public comment or we don't, and I think Will makes a strong statement that we are not only open to, but welcoming public comment.
Well, Jerry had it, then I go to you, Jason. Go
I
ahead,
like
Jerry.
the firm voices on this, fantastic. I'll take shall, to me, it sounds more formal, more legal. But will is more definitive, for sure.
As long as it's got two L's in it.
We're heading in the right direction here, boys.
Yeah, and, Jason?
I was gonna say, I'm happy, I would prefer to go to shall or will, because, and then I know we're gonna talk about 10 too, because I think at the end of the day, Jim, you know, like you said, we still have item 12, which notes that we can modify, change, suspend, or rescind, and, you know, we can make a group decision to do that. And I agree with Erwin about messaging this as something we shall be doing.
I'd be in favor of shall.
Shall.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay, just so, yeah, I mean, just to summarize for sure, like I said, the strong voices are outstanding. Shall works, will works, but I think, you know, the point is that we're heading in the right direction. And it's gonna get done, and it's gonna get done tonight, hopefully, moving forward.
So, going around the floor here, shall good for you?
Shall.
Shall?
Shall.
Shall?
Shall?
Shall is it, Jim?
Okay, from the results of this meeting, I'll prepare another one with the date that it was adopted, today's date, and I will change that to shall.
You shall change.
You shall change it.
I shall do that.
All right, so we're ready to go to number 4?
Yes.
Nope, or you got more for number 2
No.
/
So where we say here, shall be limited to a maximum of 2 minutes, I'd like a statement in there at the discretion of the chair, whatever the word would be, that someone can speak a second time after everybody else that wishes to speak has spoken, and leave it at the discretion of the chair, so that if time is of the essence, the chair can move it along. But I think it's important, if people speak and then somebody else that already spoke wanted to add to it or change what they were saying based on what other people said, as we do in town meeting, where people have a second opportunity to speak. But I would like it to be at the discretion of the chair, so that the chair can, if the meeting's bogged down, can move it along.
So is there just one simple sentence, at the discretion of the chair? The chair may allow?
Yeah.
Speaker to speak a
Do
second
you
time.
wanna just allow it automatically, or once you've spoken once, like, speakers may speak a second time, provided that other speakers have had their chance at the discretion of the chair? I mean, you wanna be precise here.
Second time for 2 minutes, again. Right, have to put that in as well.
It should be a different subject, though. If the person's gonna go up a second time and say the same thing that he said the first time, then it's a moot point.
I think what Erwin's getting at, and you certainly speak for yourself, but based on the conversation, the input from people already speaking, someone may want to have another comment that's different than what they said the first time, or expands or explains something that they said the first time.
Which will be at the discretion of the chair.
Yeah.
Correct, okay, great.
So do you want it to be, though, after all other persons have spoken?
To that item,
Yeah.
right.
Okay, speakers may speak a second time for 2 minutes after all others have spoken, and you want to make this at the discretion of the chair, so say,
I might be a little too persnickety here, but after all others have, all others who wish to speak to that agenda item,
right, okay.
so that it's clear that we're still on that agenda
Yeah,
item.
so we don't go backwards.
Yeah.
Okay. At the discretion, I have my computer with me, I should have just opened it up. At the discretion of the chair, speakers may speak a second time on the same agenda item for 2 minutes after all others have spoken for a first time.
Okay, and Jason, did you have something to add?
Did you say all other, after all other who?
At the discretion of the chair,
Yeah.
speakers may speak a second time on the same agenda item for 2 minutes after all others have spoken for the first time on that item, just to
On
be
that item.
crystal clear, first time.
Okay, I was gonna say that I do like that addition, and I think it connects to something, like when we talk about the next section, which we have to just kind of, clear up. Right now where we have, not all matters presented by speakers on an agenda item may be discussed, responded to, or acted upon by the select board. So this goes to the person who makes a comment versus the person who makes a question, right? So if the person just makes a comment, great, we don't have to do any, we of course, we listen, but we don't, there's no back and forth. If they ask a question, you make a decision to answer it. And then, so allowing them another response, I think, is helpful. But then my only question about this is, should we be having the phrase "at the discretion of the chair"? Because, the whole point of, the whole thing that started this was limiting speech in some kind, right, like we have to be thoughtful about when we open up speech. We have to allow people to be able to speak. Is there some kind of potential complication by having this be at the discretion of the chair? To say a person, asks a question, we don't directly respond to it, we talk, we listen to other people, maybe they ask a question and then they wanna respond to what they've heard, but we say they can't, because we gotta move along. Does that present some kind of problem with the current, the state of
Well, when you say
this?
at the discretion of the chair, then presumably the chair, or you could even make it at the discretion of the board and make the board vote on it, but I think that's gonna be kind of cumbersome. You could say anyone can speak a second time on the same agenda item for 2 minutes after all others have spoken, and you can see how that plays out. If you find that that's getting to be a problem, then you can amend this to say at the discretion of the chair.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one way of addressing it, but go whatever you folks want.
I'm still in favor at the discretion of the chair, because hypothetically, if you have 20 people come speak to an agenda item, pretty much everything that needs to be said is said at that point, and if everybody then wants to talk a second time, the chair, who's responsible for running the meeting and moving along, could say at that time, we've heard enough, we've spoken enough, we have to move the agenda. Otherwise, we could get bogged down.
I'm in favor at discretion of the chair.
Yeah, this is a situation where you have to have somebody manage the room,
Control.
and the chair does that, so,
That's
no
the role of
question.
the
And
chair.
the 2 minutes is fair. Allowing another 2 minutes is even more fair in my eyes. And keeping them on track is gonna be Greg's job, and, acting almost like a moderator at town meeting, really, so.
So we're fine with that
Yeah,
letter at the
that's fine.
end, everybody? It's okay not to be okay with
Yeah,
it?
I would just say it's something to keep an eye on, right, because, I hear what everybody's saying for purposes of efficiency, but the reason we're revising this is because of what happened with the Supreme Court decision, right? So, you're still making a decision by doing this at somebody's discretion to stop somebody from speaking again. And I don't get the sense that that's necessarily a problem that Jim is seeing, but, I don't,
I think it's great. Yeah, it's a good point. It is a good point, and it's probably works both ways. The chair could cut him off early, but he also has the discretion to allow him to speak longer. Also, in my eyes, one of the things that I talked to Jim about was discretion in number 10 was in there, and same thing. I'm thinking along the same lines, it shouldn't be under anyone's discretion. We're gonna allow people to talk, and that's it. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna give them 2 minutes, and then maybe another 2 minutes after everyone's spoken, but, you know, Greg's gonna keep them in line. That's all, you know, to me, fair, and it's leaps and bounds where we were before. You know, the last piece of it is, Greg has 4 watchdogs over him. If there's any sort of issue and you feel like somebody's being disrespected, or if I feel like that, you know, we can certainly speak up and say, you know, please give them some more time to make their point.
Yeah.
That's the only situation I could see possibly happening. I don't see Greg doing that, but I'm just saying that, potentially, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
I think the chair would use that very judiciously. I'm not, I don't, and we have to trust the judgment of the chair.
Correct. Future chairs.
Yep.
And circling back to number 10, I think Jim sent me a long email, but the solution is, it sounds like it's a collective here, okay? So Greg isn't gonna be in charge of cutting, it's really all of our decision, all the way through this. So, again, we have 4 watchdogs, keeping an eye on Greg as our chair, making sure that he's treating people the right way, and if someone has something more to say, I think we're all on the same page here, we're gonna let him say it.
Yep.
So, as I understand the language, and don't hesitate to correct me, at the discretion of the chair, speakers may speak a second time on the same agenda item for 2 minutes after all others have spoken for a first time on that item.
I think that captures it.
Yes, it does. So we are good with that paragraph, that section?
Yeah. Did we go, yeah.
Yeah, we're on to 4?
5.
5.
Okay, so, number 4 on the document I gave you, all remarks shall be addressed to or through the chair of the select board. Not all matters presented by speakers on an agenda item may be discussed, responded to, or acted upon by the select board at the time they are presented, or necessarily at any time. Speakers are encouraged to confine their speaking to be on matters related to the agenda item and within the scope of the select board's and town's authority. So there's 2 sentences there. The first one, you know, typical meeting procedure, people speak through the chair, they don't speak directly at people, but, you know, there's some flexibility on that. Actually, there's 3 sentences there. And the second sentence, not all matters presented by speakers on the agenda will necessarily be discussed by the board. Some policies in other communities are very specific and say that the select board members or the board members will not respond to public comments. Now, that works great if you think that you're all gonna be disciplined enough to not want to respond to something, especially if they're asking a question or if they're making a statement that is just inaccurate and you want to correct it. So that's why I put there that someone says something, thank you, we appreciate your comment. You're not obligated to respond to it, but you may if you wish.
I think the last time we discussed that was the consensus. That's why I said number 5, so, yeah, I think we're good on 4. Does anybody have any issues on number 4?
I'd just say one thing, I'm
Sure.
fine with the language, but I think it's something to think about too. I mean, I agree with you, we're all kind of watching, but at the end of the day, I mean, you're controlling the meeting, or whoever the chair is, and so it's a lot on you. So I could just see times where, okay, so somebody's given 2 minutes, they're like, yeah, I just have a question, and they ask one question, and then we answer, and then they immediately, you know, maybe it only took them 10 seconds to ask their question, and they have more. And so I don't know if it's just something around the lines of, we'll just see how this all plays out, but I could see times where we just say, you know, they ask a question, do you have any more while you still have your time? Maybe give us all your questions now, and we can see how we can address them in response, you know?
Yep.
That's such a kind of a silly thing, but I can see it getting easily out of control, right? Because somebody asks a question, and then amongst us, we have a bunch of different responses, opinions, you know, and then that person feels like they didn't really get to use their time, and, oh, wait, I had 2 more things to say, you know? So that's gonna be a little tricky. But,
I think a lot of this is, you're gonna have to see how it plays out,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because, you know, you've got important business to do, and comments from the public are certainly important, but you don't wanna be here, you know, like they say, nothing good happens at a meeting after 10:30. You know, so you don't wanna drag things out or have, you know, multiple meetings when it may not be necessary. And I think in the beginning, you know, you have to see how it is. It's like a new item to use, and, you know, in the beginning, there may be more activity on it, then as time goes on, it may level out.
because just to finish that point, I could see a situation too where they ask a question, we're being kind of loose, we're going back and forth, and then, you know, someone's watching like, oh, so-and-so went well over their time. Well, they didn't really speak for 2 minutes, you know, this much time, it was 10 minutes, but 7 minutes or 8 minutes was us, you know, so, you know, people are gonna want their time. I don't know, it's just, that's gonna be a tricky thing, yeah.
Speaking of time, we're gonna have to, you know, at town meeting, the town clerk and the moderator, either one or both of them, has literally a timer, and when someone starts speaking, they push the button. Nowadays, you can do it on your smartphones, but we probably should get, you know, the office should get some type of a good, decent device. In court, they have like a clock or a digital type clock counting down the time or recording the time so that people get an idea when they're speaking. In the appellate courts, they keep very close time on that, and they'll say, you have a couple of minutes left, but please wind up. But
I'll get a 2-minute
2-minute
hourglass sand thing. That's what we'll do. Just
Yeah.
flip it upside down.
Big one,
All
right?
right. All right, so we're good with item 4? All right, moving on to 5.
Okay. All persons addressing the select board are encouraged to maintain order and civility and present their remarks in a respectful manner, and to refrain from making any personal, impertinent, unduly repetitive, slanderous, or profane remarks. Speakers are further encouraged to respect the views and opinions of others, including members of the select board and the general public, and to treat others as the speaker wishes to be treated. The key thing to point out there is that it says encouraged, because that federal case that I came across, that was an issue there, and their policy said encourage. Someone filed suit in federal court over the policy and everything, and the court said, no, it's not forcing people, it's saying you're encouraged. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why encouraged is being used there, and we're just encouraging people to be respectful. I call it, you know, the golden rule, treat others as you yourself would like to be treated. Whether people do that or not remains to be seen.
Are we all comfortable with 5? 5 is good. On to 6.
Okay. The chair reserves the right to terminate speech which is not constitutionally protected because it constitutes true threats, incitement to imminent lawless conduct, comments that were found by a court of law to be defamatory, and/or sexually explicit comments made to appeal to prurient interests. That was language, I believe, that I took from that federal case, the policies that that community had. I don't expect to be something that would be coming up constantly or frequently or at all, hopefully, here. But while people have a right to speak, the courts and the law does recognize some limitations on what people can say. Just like, you know, you can't shout fire in a movie theater. There are cases, if it gets into that type of a situation, where speech is not, has been determined not to be protected speech because of its nature, incitement of violations of the law, etc. So that's where that came from.
Everyone good with leaving it there?
Very
Any
good.
questions?
I just have one question.
Yes.
I consider myself pretty good at English. Can you expand on the word prurient?
A simple.
Prurient, I can get you a legal
No.
definition of it, but prurient, refers to sexually, in the context of this, refers to sexually explicit comments or language or prurient interests. I don't feel that I should be giving a definition. I can get a definition
No, that's okay.
for people.
I think I get the gist.
Yeah, but, that came up as a frequent term several years ago when places were having license requests for adult entertainment and guidelines from the courts.
Thanks, Jim. Erwin?
I'm stuck on the comments that were found by a court of law to be defamatory. How do we know what those comments were, and does that allow for a whole argument about, well, what is that comment? Was it found by a court of law? Where do we know what comments a court of law determined are defamatory?
In order for the chair to terminate speech under that particular phrase that relates to comments that were found by a court of law to be defamatory, someone would have to be showing or telling the board that those comments were found to be defamatory. I do not think that it's expected that the board would be reading up on cases to know whether something is defamatory. I think as a practical matter, it may refer to, if there's an existing case that's been decided by a court where a court said that in typically defamatory matters, slanderous matters, things of that nature deal with particular people. A general statement would not generally be considered slanderous. So if there was a court, again, these are things that communities are trying to address to include in their policies, not knowing what's going to happen down the road. But if there was a court of law, a case where Joe took Mary to court, suing her for slander, and a court determined that yes, that comment was slanderous, and that comment came to, for some reason, someone wanted to repeat that comment at a public meeting, and we knew about that court determination, then the chair could say, well, I'm going to cut you off. That's a defamatory statement, and we're not going to allow that here. I think it's going to be rare, if ever, but that was something that seemed to me to make sense to have in the policy.
But I guess my question is, how would the chair know what comments a court of law determined were defamatory?
They wouldn't unless someone told them, or unless, for example, we knew that there was going to be a particular topic before the board, and there was a court case involving someone who was related to the topic that's being discussed, and a court already ruled that that was defamatory. Highly unlikely scenario, but nonetheless, it's put in there just as an abundance of caution. The board wants to take it out, we can take it out, but, it's just trying to give the board as much flexibility and the town and the board protection.
That's what I was gonna say. So leaving it in there gives us a little more protection. If there is a court case down the line, this is crystal clear to anyone that's speaking in a meeting. If we take it out, it's not crystal clear. If they don't choose to read this online or in person, whatever it may be, take it out, there's a chance that we don't have the protection we need. Is that why you're saying we should leave it?
I don't see a harm in leaving it in, and I think it gives the town and the board additional protection. It can always be taken out if a court rules that you can't prevent someone from slandering, defaming someone at a meeting. But, and it says the chair reserves the right. It doesn't mandate the chair to take such action.
I think the whole reason we're here is because there was a rule in place to not allow people to talk, right? And one of the issues that I've heard is that, you know, there might be some people that just, you know, say off-the-wall things, and so if we're changing that whole situation to turn it around so people can speak at these meetings, and we allow an out for that one-in-a-million scenario where someone comes in and just goes completely bananas, I'm okay with that. And again, we play it by ear, we see how it goes. We have, the four of us, keep an eye on Greg to make sure that, you know, things
I
are
got
done
eyes all
properly.
over me.
You okay?
I'm
with
good.
that, Erwin, you
Yeah,
okay with it?
I'm good. I'll go
So we
with it.
play by ear.
I understand where you're coming from,
I do
because
too.
it's in, like, me sitting here, I'm not gonna be able to go through my head and
Right,
think of all those
exactly.
things, but I do like the layer of protection for not me, for the town, and all of us, basically.
But, okay, I think it overly complicates it, but let's see how it plays out.
All right, so we all good with leaving 6 in?
Yep.
Okay, all right, on to 7.
Individuals in attendance at a public meeting should refrain from engaging in disorderly or boisterous conduct, including the utterance of loud, threatening, or abusive language, whistling, stamping feet, or other acts which disrupt or otherwise impede a speaker and/or the orderly conduct of any meeting. Again, it's aspirational in the sense that basically it means people are encouraged to refrain from doing that, and hopefully that won't happen, but it's likely to happen, but, you know, the town would just be asking people to please keep that in mind and act appropriately at a meeting.
Sounds pretty clear to me.
I'm in favor of
Yep.
leaving it there.
Yep.
I think we're all in favor of 7.
Yep.
Should these be put together, 7 and 8? Do you think these should be put together, 7 and 8? They kind of run into each other, saying, carrying on what 7 says.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
ready, yeah.
Well, the two different concepts, actually, I appreciate you suggesting that, but 8, and let me read 8 and then we can talk about it. In accordance with state law, no person shall disrupt the proceedings of a meeting. If after clear warning from the chair, a person continues to disrupt the proceedings, the chair may order the person to withdraw from the meeting. And if the person does not withdraw, the chair may authorize a constable or other officer to remove the person from the meeting. That's quoting a specific statute. That's number 8. Number 7, there's not a statute that says that. I would prefer to keep 7 and 8 separate, because 7 is the language of a specific statute. I would also, you know, say that hopefully we never have to get to the point where someone needs to be removed from a meeting. I've always recommended in the past that if things get so heated that someone, you know, I've been to many meetings over the years, and I'm not referring to whole meetings necessarily, but, you know, I've been to meetings where, you know, things get a little heated, and it's control and orderly conduct is starting to fade, and when the chair declares a recess for 5 minutes, 99 and 44, 100% of the time, when the meeting resumes, everyone has calmed down, and, you know, you're able to proceed in an orderly fashion and not have to remove someone. I don't,
Yeah, so.
legally, that can happen, and there are cases where it's happened, but frankly, someone being removed from a meeting is a sure way to create a claim, even if it was justified in the removal.
Yeah, so I see 7 as just something we would all like everyone to do, but if they cannot behave, 8 is the way to handle it.
It's a mechanism.
The mechanism in place that allows us to take care of something if we need to. I'm in favor of
My
leaving it.
favorite.
Leaving it in, keeping it separate's fine too.
Okay.
We good with that? Leaving them in, keeping them separate? All right?
So now we're on to
Number 9.
9. Whenever the public is allowed to participate in remote public meetings, the same rules and guidelines that apply to in-person meetings shall be applied to its remote counterpart.
I
That's
strongly
pretty
agree with that,
straightforward.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Leave it in.
Okay, now we're on to number 10. The public comment opportunity to speak on agenda items is a discretionary matter, and the select board may omit it from a meeting agenda to prioritize time for other matters. the select board may from time to time impose particular rules on the time, place, and manner of public comment that support and promote the ability of the select board to meet, debate, deliberate, and act on matters before them, it should be before it, in a orderly manner. So I'll change that, well, maybe it reads right both ways, them or it, but it refers to, you know, them, well, I don't know, who's the grammar expert here?
Jerry, you said you were.
That's a great question. I would go with it, I think, but I'm not an expert.
Yeah, no, I think.
I think you're right.
Jason, I know does a lot of writing. So, okay.
Understood.
So, what this,
Yeah, yeah.
what this, and Jerry and I communicated, you know, on this, this doesn't allow the chair to say, I'm not gonna let you speak. You know, it basically says that the board has the flexibility or discretion to decide to omit public comment on an agenda item, which I would urge should be done in advance so that the agenda indicates that. Because of timing issues or other matters, you know, suppose you have a state representative and senator and perhaps Congressman Lynch here, and it's a full agenda on things, you may want to have some control so that the meeting can flow appropriately. So it's the board that would have to vote to omit it. The chair does not have that unilateral ability to do so. And sometimes there may be some item that's before the board that you may want to have some special rules for, you know, for displays or things of that nature. This just makes it clear that you have the authority to do that.
Thanks, Jim. Erwin?
Question, I don't know the answer to this, but if we're going to meet to determine whether or not we will have public comment on an agenda item, that's a public meeting and has to be an open meeting.
Absolutely.
And it has to have an agenda posted. I think this is onerous, and it would require us to have a meeting to determine whether or not there should be public comment on an agenda item in an upcoming meeting. Right? And at that open meeting then, since it's a select board meeting, we would have to have public comment at that meeting as well. I would be most comfortable to eliminate 10 altogether. I think it can open up a Pandora's box.
Can I go first? Sure. When I see 10, I think of our goal-setting meeting. Like, we could never have a meeting where it's just us, it's always open to the public, but a goal-setting meeting is where we're coming up with ideas, bouncing them around, seeing what our goals and objectives are. If we had a room full of people in that kind of meeting, it may not go as smooth as we need it to go, because we're going to get a lot of requests to have public comments on that. Goal-setting meetings is the one I can think of. There may be other, like if we're in a meeting the week before and we know something's coming up where it doesn't need that comment, we could vote that night. I do hear what you're saying, but, you know, just for that goal-setting meeting, I see 10 as a good tool. It's not to stop the public, it's just so we have a good meeting.
So, Greg, would the goal-setting talk be an agenda item, or is it just
It's,
new business, or?
how would that be on, it's gotta be an agenda item, it would basically
Well,
be
somewhere beyond the agenda, whether it's a designated, you know, timed agenda item or just under other business, you know, goal setting, you know, for like a larger discussion. Typically, things that are assigned a specific time are like license applications or like some type of a presentation, or when Representative Moschino or Senator O'Connor, you know, come in, try to do it at a special time so that they can go about other business. Depends how you want to do the agenda. And to Erwin's, you know, point, how is that decided? There may be a need to have a meeting to decide that. But sometimes, like for example, at tonight's meeting, some new business may come up that's not on the agenda, and someone may say, yeah, put that on the agenda at the next meeting or 2 meetings down, and, you know, let's not have public comment on that particular item for ABC reasons. Won't always be that way, but it, you know, I try to design things to give public authorities some flexibility and not be locked into doing something that may be not as efficient as giving them flexibility.
So this is the one I emailed Jim about, because I did have it was the only thing I really picked out that I had a big problem with. And did it say chair? The chair had the discretion on the other version, or is this exactly how it read?
This is exactly,
Okay.
to my knowledge, this is, I
Okay,
don't know
yeah,
if you had an earlier draft.
No,
or
no,
something.
I may have thought that's what I saw, but
Yeah,
either way, I still kind of have the same opinion of this whole thing, and I think I'm going to be siding with Erwin on this one, because it's not discretionary. I can't think of a reason why, and again, I've been to a few meetings now, one of them, or 2 of them were extremely hot topics, and there was nobody in the room. Nobody. 3 or 4 people, and I was one of them. And we weren't allowing the public to speak. So, in my opinion, it's not discretionary. I don't care if Steve Lynch is here, or if the President of the United States is here. If someone is here to speak on something that's gonna affect their property, their quality of life, you give them 2 minutes. Simple as that. So it shouldn't be discretionary.
Go ahead.
Typically, what we've done with goals is that's a separate meeting. It's not a regularly scheduled. We've done it the one time that I've been here, we did it on a Saturday. And when that agenda goes out, it could be, this is a goal-setting meeting. The board will not be taking comments, but
I'd be good with that.
Right, but if you don't have 10 in place, you can't send that message out. Am I correct on that?
well, maybe you can change the language of 10 to indicate there are some meetings that the board, because of the nature of them or time issues, that the board will decide not to have public comment. What you've
Yeah.
done so far, and you may find that it doesn't work down the road, but it's a good open system that you have now. You know, what you've done now is basically say every agenda item would allow for public comment. But I think as you get more into your function as select board members, I think you may see that certain items, you may want to prioritize time on certain things. You can, you know, just gives you the flexibility, that's all. But, you know, it's not legally required, but it gives the board flexibility.
I like the flexibility because we can announce it beforehand, we can vote on it beforehand, and with that goal-setting meeting, I think we need it. Without that in there, that meeting doesn't go as well as it's supposed to go. Jason?
But I think we can still set something like a goal-setting meeting without allowing public comment because of section 12, which gives us the right as a board to, you know, which I hope we'll keep, but skipping ahead, it gives us the right to, you know, amend, modify, supplement, change, suspend the policy, right? So, I don't know. I see it either way, but we have this 12 catch-all, right? I mean, we could.
Well, to do 12, you would have to formally vote to suspend your policy every time you wanna not have public comment on an item, whereas 10 gives you the flexibility to decide that you're not suspending your policy, but you're acting within your policy by deciding at a board meeting that when we get to this item, we're not going to have public comment for whatever reason.
Erwin?
could we, I guess, what I don't like about this is that it says it's discretionary, and we're trying to make it a policy, that we don't pick and choose when people can speak and what they can speak to. So, to me, it's not discretionary, but could we change the wording to maybe from time to time, there may be special meetings where public comment will not be invited, such as, but I don't
I
like
think
that.
this is,
you
I
get
think it would be the
discretion.
goal of both you and what Jim said too. Maybe the wording's different, but, I mean, a goal-setting meeting is between the five of us, or 5 select board meetings in the future, not, I don't think I'd wanna take public comment from us trying to set goals.
Mhm.
I mean, I think that's,
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna get your public comment long before that meeting. You're gonna know what the citizens are asking for, but that to me is what protects us in that meeting, or allows us to have a vote to say on that particular meeting. Jerry, you had a question?
I also would suggest that a Saturday meeting, goal-setting meeting, is one that you would want to allow public comment in as well. I mean, that sounds like a pretty important meeting. I know it's like an internal type thing. We're not allowed to meet. It's been a few weeks now, right? 3 or 4 weeks trying to figure out how this works. But the 5 of us can't get together and speak about anything, right? It can only be done here.
Correct.
So, one of the things Brian brought up was we should be having maybe more meetings. Maybe, he brought up Saturday
I was
meetings.
gonna bring that, in the fall, I mean, let's have a beautiful summer, another
Oh,
40
you're-
days or
you're
so,
gonna
and then after Labor Day, let's get going. That's
So I don't
kinda-
know-
was one of my things I was gonna bring up, so.
There are a lot of meetings.
What
there.
is, like, a goal-setting meeting? Give me some examples of what we discuss and,
Just, somebody may want, one of us may want to have Ken Burma done over. We talk about that, and then we come up with probably, 60 goals last year?
I don't think it was.
Prioritize, no, in conversation about 60 different things, prioritize them, put them in separate groups where they belong.
which would turn into agenda
And
items,
then
right?
then after that, we have meetings with the public here and talk about those each individual. So
Right.
in that one meeting, I think it's important that we as 5 start the conversation. Usually the town manager will clean it up, then we'll come to a meeting, and then we'll go over those goals and
And then
objectives.
at that point, the
And
public.
then the public's right there with us.
It makes sense,
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
so-
And we look at
Makes
the
sense.
previous goals and objectives to see what progress has been made. Do they stay on the agenda? Have they been accomplished?
So there's mechanisms in place
But this is
for the
all,
public.
it's
to
also
be
somewhat of
engaged.
prioritizing agenda items. Right? Big time, big picture, goal planning,
Mhm.
3, 4, 5 years down the.
Mhm.
So again, I kind of fall back on, we're here to talk about public comment. I think, that's also something that, Saturday is sometimes the only time people can make a meeting. Some people travel for work and they're gone, so just something to consider.
Go ahead,
I
Jason.
would just say, I think we should just take it out. I mean, I think, especially because we're talking about, it seems like the consensus around maybe one meeting a year that we wouldn't accept public comment. I think I would agree with Cherry's alluding to, like, things like where, our state rep or our state senator comes, if somebody wants to say something, as long as it's kind of relevant to what they're talking about, there really are, I agree, there's gonna be very few exceptions for me about saying nobody can speak, and so if it's a one meeting a year and we make a decision to suspend our, this policy for public comment for that one meeting, and we say that, and we're clear as to why, and we put it on the agenda, and that's one time a year, I think it's better to take it out and be clear with this policy, this temporary policy, that we're pro public comment, and that's our default.
But we could also, that would mean we could do it for, any other meeting too, 12. So 12 basically covers 10.
Yeah, it's broader. I mean, what Jim is saying is about how we have to make a decision to suspend versus just saying, under our policy, we're allowed to not have public comment. But, we can just, if we're clear about why we're suspending for a single meeting a year,
Mhm.
I don't think that's a big deal. And I like the default towards public comment.
Your legal opinion? Do you have one?
There's no legal right or wrong way to do it.
Mhm.
As I said, 10 was designed to give you some discretion. I believe there are other communities, nothing's an original idea. There may be other communities that may have something similar to that, and I appreciate what you're saying. You can see how it goes. I put it in more, A, to give you discretion, and B, to let the public know that there may be time to time that the board's not going to allow public comment on something. It says here, to prioritize time for other matters. So it was sort of like, you just can't say, well, we're not gonna have public comment because you can't say we're not gonna have public comment because we're concerned about who's gonna speak or what they're gonna say. That's clearly taboo. But you could take it out, I just, you know, you could suspend your rules, but, to address it. I just thought that making it clearer that that's something that could happen was better, but
Sounds like we might have to make a motion to vote on this one, item number 10, to eliminate it completely? I make a motion to delete it completely?
Second.
How are we with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with, you're fine with
All
that.
right, so motion to approve eliminating number 10.
Eliminate.
Aye.
All right, I think we're in
Like I said,
favor.
12 covers it, so.
Yeah.
12 covers.
All right, so 10's out, Jim. On to 11.
Number 11 was somewhat legal protection oriented, and also just to make it clear that, I'll read it, I'm sorry. Comments made at public meetings by the public do not reflect the views or positions of the select board or the town. Because of constitutional free speech principles, the select board and the town do not have the authority or responsibility to prevent all speech that may be upsetting and or offensive at meetings. Just reiterating what the law is.
Pretty cut
Any
and dry to me.
questions? Everyone good with leaving it there?
Yep.
Okay, good to leave 11.
And number 12, the numbers without change, of course. This policy is temporary and will be reviewed and evaluated from time to time by the select board. The select board reserves the right and opportunity, I hate to use the word, at its discretion to amend, modify, supplement, change, suspend, or rescind all or parts of this policy.
Now, would you have to add verbiage on the end of that, like at any time?
No,
Or does it just cover it the way you have it
it
worded?
says from time to time,
All right, okay. So time to time is covering it.
yeah.
All right, are you guys good with the
Problem with
verbiage?
that?
Nope.
Good?
12, yeah.
Good with 12.
Do we vote on this as a whole tonight?
You know, I would suggest you do that and just to
Yeah, just to finalize it. you know,
Yeah.
then-
Yeah, so we can
capsulize
move
here,
on.
the changes that I see is in number 3 or 2, we'll have to straighten out the formatting. The word shall is replacing the word may. Also in that same section, we're adding, at the discretion of the chair, speakers may speak a second time on the same agenda item for 2 minutes after all others have spoken for a first time on that item. And we're eliminating number 10. That, I think, is the only changes.
Yep.
All right. All right, so with that said,
Move to
Erwin?
accept the temporary guidelines for individual speaking at public meetings as amended.
Seconded.
motion made by Erwin, seconded by Jerry. And the only thing I would like to say is, after we get a clean copy, maybe just vote again when we have that clean copy in place. I'm fine with voting it and then just nail it down the next meeting we have.
So are you
Go ahead.
saying that on the next agenda, you're not?
No, 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 we can vote on it now,
Okay.
but just
Yeah, yeah.
do a quick review at our next meeting after it's clean.
So
Just
that
to
next agenda, you'll put
double
the-
down on it. So next agenda, people, if we vote okay, all in favor tonight, at our next meeting, the public can talk about agenda items.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So when will it become effective?
I would assume immediately.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I will make the changes over the next couple of days and send it all out to you and to Laurie and to Chief and anyone else who wants it. And I'm sure it will be posted on the town's, website.
That's what I was
And
asking.
I don't do social media, but I'm sure people will get it out there on social media.
And Jerry has another
I would
question.
just suggest that we have it very first on the agenda to proofread it,
Absolutely.
stamp it into
Mhm.
existence.
All right, so again, motion made by Erwin, seconded by Jerry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Excellent job. All right, we're past that one.
Thanks, Joe. Herculean.
All right, just general discussion on scheduling annual board and committee appointments. There are a lot. of board and committee appointments that some people may choose to just stay on the board, so we'd have to reappoint them. Other people are gonna wanna come in. We usually try to get this done this time of year. Are we okay with moving forward as Laurie gets the request in so we can fill these seats? Because there are a bunch that need to be filled. So go ahead, Owen.
Yeah, I don't know how this goes over, but we have, people can, and I absolutely encourage everybody to apply to and to be on committees. I think it's wonderful. But my concern is that people apply for a committee without really knowing what the committee's about or what the committee does. And I would like to see a procedure where, before we vote, people that are applying to a committee should be asked or encouraged to attend a meeting of that committee before we vote on their application, so that they know what they're getting themselves into, and the other members of that committee can see who's applying.
I think that would show commitment, when voting is, one of the questions could be, have you attended a meeting?
Yeah.
If they say no, then say there's two people, and one has attended the committee, a meeting, and one hasn't, maybe there's a little,
Becomes part of the decision.
Yep.
Yeah. The only thing you could say to that is experience-wise, most people that come to us have already been part of it. But if you want to make it a rule, that's a whole,
I don't know about a rule, but just
Yeah.
a statement encouraging people
Yes.
to, because I don't want to chase away volunteers by making it a rule.
especially nowadays.
Yeah, but if we can just put out a statement that we encourage people prior to applying for a meeting, for a committee, that they make every effort to attend. the
To see what it's all
agree,
about.
100%.
Yeah, it should reduce turnover.
Yeah, well, and so when there's reappointments, like when Laurie sent that list, I was very surprised. There's a lot.
I was gonna ask you, so
But if you're-
approximately how many?
Probably 40 or 50
Wow.
would be the range. There's one that is completely wiped out, I forget which one it is, but
Yeah.
their terms expire. It's just terms that we set. So once they expire, if they still want to stay on that board, like that individual that's been on the board but the term expires, they don't have to come in to do an interview. A brand-new person is the one that's gonna have to come in, so we have to set aside some time, so,
But I'm sorry, but they do have to request to be reappointed.
yes, they have to
Right,
send
they
a
don't have to
formal, they have to send a formal letter to Laurie. Laurie will let us know. Jimmy, get your hand up.
Greg, who monitors that?
Well, no, just in general, Laurie
monitors
monitors
that?
it. So
Laurie monitors it.
Laurie has this program, it goes out to every chair of every board, letting them know that they have a person on their board that their
Okay.
term has expired. If there's seats to be filled, Laurie puts that in the Times for an allotted time. People respond, she collects all those letters, and that's, this time of year is when they come to us. We used to do it spotty throughout the whole year.
Yeah, it's a good idea to
Now
do
we
it
try
once.
to get it
Yeah.
all done at
Smart.
once so they can all
Yep.
function, so.
And it's listed on the website, the terms, so people can see if there are empty seats and terms that are expired. It's on there for
You got a
every
question?
So it's kind of a related thing in a way, but one thing, especially knowing that there's so many people who have applied and need to be interviewed, and so there's gonna be some contested seats, right?
There always is.
Yes.
Yeah, but I wonder, kind of going off of Erwin's point, when, maybe it's about making an announcement, because we do them in groups, right, with each
Yes.
committee?
Mhm.
So ahead of the committee, and all the people are here, when, they're here for their individual time, so they're not necessarily here, say there's, 4 interviews for one committee, they're kind of staggered in times, all 4 people won't be here,
Oh,
right?
they're one
They
right
will.
after the other.
The one right after the other,
Yeah.
okay, so I'm
So the
just thinking.
fourth one to go, doesn't really have much to say because the other 3 have said something already.
Right. But I think maybe to be clear, it's ahead of each person's interview. I would encourage or suggest something on the lines of, in making the decision, of who we are planning to appoint to these committees, we're excited to hear your interview, hear, what connects you to the mission and objectives and work of this committee, and we'll make our decision off the basis of this interview, what we hear about your industry, your background. I mean, just something small like that, we don't have to overly formalize it, but to let people know kind of a little of our evaluation criteria, so that, that's something I've heard from people over the years, it's hard for people to know why they didn't get picked, right? Because, they, and then it just can discourage public service, right, because they're not always completely clear, right? And, you know, when you have a lot of these interviews to do, it can, but I think if we just do that ahead of maybe each one, just a little one, we're gonna listen, you know, and I know you do stuff like that anyway, but
Yeah.
if we're extra clear each time, I think it'll, you know, help encourage more people to publicly serve if they don't, if this is the first time they're doing it
Yep.
and they don't get it, you know?
Yeah, we have,
Just a thought.
usually when someone comes in, it seems like they most have a backup, like one wants to serve on multiple boards, so.
I
And
see.
usually that question will come out of one of us, if you don't get this position, as we see this massive list in front of us, do you have an interest in this? And you'll get that, and it's amazing how it works. Some people will be fine, they'll be in the audience saying, you know what, why don't you give it to him, and I'll go on this committee.
Yeah, yeah.
What we find, what I've seen a number of times, is people say, it doesn't matter, I just want to become involved. I want to do something for the town, so if I can't go on that committee, I'll go on this committee. Or somebody, once we asked somebody, I think it was the sewer commission, why the sewer commission? Well, I saw there was an opening, I wanted to get involved in town, and that seemed like a good place to start.
Right, right.
So it's actually a very nice process.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So with that said, she's gonna start scheduling. So Jim has something to say first.
Along the lines of what Earl was suggesting, you may want to have Laurie put in the ad that goes into the paper and gets posted on the website and on the cable TV, that, you know, candidates for those requesting appointment to a committee or a board are strongly urged to attend meetings of that board and review the function or the mission of that board, so that they have, you know, better idea, if that's what you want to do.
And the time restraints, you know?
Yeah, that's a big
Because I
one.
remember years ago at the Council on Aging, majority of the members wanted to have the meeting at 10 o'clock in the morning. You know, they were an older crowd at that time, so, and I worked, but I took the time off to do it, so it's also about, you know, time restraints, so whether you can,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, so I could have Laurie send that verbiage to each chair, so that gets covered with people that are existing, and then she's already thrown out that ad, like it's been out there. So I don't think she would put another ad, maybe she could email anyone that is sending in stuff, just email them back that says what you were just saying.
Yeah.
So they're fully aware of what's
Could
going
just
on.
be a standard email that
Yeah.
she shoots off to them, yeah. Thank you for your application, or thank you for your interest, and this is what we're recommending.
Alrighty.
Great.
It's amazing, 40 people, that's great.
But, you know, some of those 40, you're gonna get 15 to 20 that, you know, as long as they wanna reserve, you're just
Right.
gonna send them
Yeah.
back in.
Right.
You know, like Park and Rec has one, she wants to serve again, no one else has sent in a letter, so it kinda makes it easy. All right, that concludes what we have on our agenda. I guess we'll go for a town manager update, if you have one.
Everything's been going very well. There's been a few calls I've had to make and emails every day, but overall, it's a quiet time of season. Mostly just mainly paperwork every day that I'm dealing with. A few calls and emails, but mainly paperwork within the building. And all the department heads are doing really well. I check with nearly all of them every day, just to see if they need anything or what's going on, but they're
Chief,
all.
thanks for stepping up, you know,
Yeah.
someone had to do it.
You're welcome.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, and any updates from board members? Questions, updates? Oh.
I got one. So I've been dealing with a lot of people down in Hampton Circle, and they're doing the playground over, and they're adding fill, which is raising a portion of the playground where the structures are going. And some of the neighborhood residents that, not that abut it, that are close to where they are adding that fill and raising it the 3 feet. So, you know, when we get storm runoffs down there, and I wouldn't call it runoffs, I'd say storm damage for the most part, it becomes overwhelming down there. So I'm not a construction guru, I'm not an engineer, but when you raise fill, or when you raise land, the water's gonna find the low point. So when I went down there to look, the low point is where some of these houses are. So, Phil Lemnios had suggested, him and I was going back and forth, because I really didn't know too much about that situation down there, and he suggested that once Jen's in place, that we have a public meeting to update the people down there, invite Chris Delorio, invite Chris Carforst, invite John Struziero just to give a quick update on, because I don't know anything about the drainage. Maybe they have drainage procedures in place. I don't know that. So, and I don't think a lot of the people down there, I know some of them said that they didn't get abutters notices, but some, you know, I looked into it, and some of them were not technically abutting the playground. They were on Moreland Road, say, and they were 130 feet away, where they only gave abutters notices to people 100 feet away. So especially on Moreland Road, where everybody's affected down there when you know what hits the fan, you know, so. So I think a meeting, once Jen's in place, I think a public meeting, just to update the people down there, you know, and while they're there, also the gun rock thing. I don't think there's too many issues down there. I think there's a fence issue. Matter of fact, I think they took the fence down, so I don't think it's an issue anymore, but just, while they're here, we can, you know, pick their brain on that too. So I would ask Greg, you know, if you could make that a priority once Jen's in place, to have either the first meeting or the second meeting, just to update the people on Hinton Circle, because I got a lot of emails and a lot of phone calls, and I try to get back to everybody, and everybody was respectful. They're just looking for more information, and I think we can give them that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You were next.
Yeah. At town meeting, the town meeting voted overwhelmingly to encourage or authorize the select board to negotiate with DCR on section 289, which basically would cause a transfer of land that we could get control of some of the DCR property on that Tasket Avenue. So I'd like to ensure that we have this on an upcoming agenda to discuss how we would like to proceed on this and follow up on that
Obviously,
vote
once
from the
Jen's in
town.
place.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right, but I don't want that to get lost. So
Yeah,
I'm
no,
just
I
bringing that
agree.
up now.
Jason?
As a related thing, it just reminds me, so I'm remaining on the Friends of the Paragon Carousel Board, and we've started to make really good movement with figuring out the lease with the DCR and DCAM lawyers, or not myself, but pro bono lawyers and other members of the board. And it's actually been really promising, because that's been the carousel's been operating on as an at-will tenant. So the carousel owns the structure that encloses the carousel and the carousel itself, but the land underneath is rented leased from the DCR, as is the clock tower building and the land underneath that. And that has been a kind of ongoing thing, because you could tell, you know, the clock tower building is in real disrepair. The town's provided a lot of money for the carousel and the shelter, which is in really good shape, and the Friends as a nonprofit group is also in really good shape. But it's a good development that's kind of happening, and, you know, with other people at the group, and so it just reminded me, because it's something to connect on. It's kind of a totally, I know, different thing from what the artists are trying to do. And then the other thing, Irwin has come down, so the Friends of Nantasket Beach is a little group I was doing before I got onto this, which is a friends group for the DCR part of the beach reservation. And this is the second year we're putting on concerts on Saturdays, and they're every Saturday from 3 p.m. on. They're grant funded, DCR supported, and so we're having another one this Saturday. That's a moon rock band. I don't know what that is,
Is that
but
at the
it's something
pavilion?
different.
Yeah, it's
At the pavilion, yeah.
Saturdays or Sundays?
Saturdays, so
Okay. This is different than the one on
different than
Sundays.
Music by the Sea,
Okay.
which is something, yeah, I mean, I know, you know, with with Gina and Lou who run that, I know something, we could talk about that at some point, and we're, you know, have helped them out in the past as well, but that's a fun event
So
happening on
that
Saturday.
Music by the Sea, they've lost funding, is that what it is? Because I actually had a woman walk into my office the other day asking for a donation, and that, did the DCI used to fund that, and they don't fund it anymore, or?
You know the history probably better than I do.
Well, years ago, DCI may have given some money, but there was a Friends of Nantasket Beach. Lenny Hirsch was chairperson of it, and they organized on Sunday, I think at 2 o'clock or something, bands like every week. And I know John Riley sort of picked up the gauntlet when Lenny passed away, and was helping to organize it and raise funds for it. Then I don't know what happened the last couple of years, because it seems like someone else took it over, and there are bands there, which is great. But it's different than what, the one that
Yeah.
Jason is talking about. And I think I think 1 year or 2 years, Phil had money in the budget to help fund it. But it was not inexpensive, because you had like every week you had a group down there, and a lot of these, groups, they wanted to get paid, for their time and everything.
Yeah. And there are, I mean, that's something long-term I'd like to try to connect with them and figure that out. I saw the messaging around it, and we have given them, from this newer friends group, grant money we've gotten, but there are, getting the grant funding for those kinds of events is just to get a couple grand really
I mean, not being the
laborious.
owners of the property, can we actually go out for grant money for that, or? I mean, the DCR owns the,
Yeah, well, you can always get grant money, but who's ever gonna be running the concerts there, they need to get permission from DCR, because it's DCR property.
Yeah.
And before, when Nancy Allen was here as the administrative assistant to the town manager, she had a whole process underway to get permission from DCR to use it as an application.
This DCR special use permit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
had to get for, several times for different things.
it's a great thing and it should continue, that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And there was a post on social media, I don't know if you guys got to see it today, but the DCR is gonna revitalize their master plan, supposedly. Like, there's no communication to us, as far as I know. You haven't seen anything, have you?
No.
But it was a post online.
From the MDC?
Well, from a different group in town, but it's an official thing that the DCR is presenting, talking about coastal resiliency, and so I guess we'll see it soon, but they're talking about revitalizing that master plan.
I will say, right during the election time, just real quick, I did meet the new commissioner, Brian Arrigo, at an event, and, I mean, but the fact that he's from Revere, and, he's from a similar town, he's a younger guy, he could be there longer than previous commissioners have been there. But I think we have to, be patient with it, because he's just starting to go around and meet, people at every reservation, and, I think if we work with Joan and Patrick to find the right time to talk with him, when Jen's here as
You have a good idea, is
well.
to invite him down?
Yeah, but I think with, my recommendation would be to, really talk that out, and talk it out with the new town manager too, about exactly what we want from that little bit of time that we can get from him, be as comprehensive and strategic as possible.
Because they were having meetings, we had a liaison, she came here, presented a bunch of
Yeah.
things, so there was a formal connection going, and
Yeah, no,
I
in
believe she
speaking with
went
Jen,
on
she
to
did say that
somewhere
we have a better relationship than people think.
yeah,
But, if you're not in the know, it doesn't look
Yeah.
like a great relationship.
we
But
just
Jen
have to
said
keep,
that it was better than I thought, so, yeah,
Mhm.
and I'll take her at her word, obviously.
just keep moving forward with it.
Yep, good.
Are you good? Jerry,
Um,
anything?
One more thing too,
One
it's
more
just
thing.
a small pet peeve about Zoom meetings as opposed to in-person meetings. I've heard from a few people in town that either don't have a computer at home, or they're all older, some older people don't have a computer, they don't have access to the Zoom meetings. So, the pandemic's over. I would like to see, obviously we can't force people, or maybe we can, but I think boards should really think about going back to in-person meetings on a more regular basis, and I'll end it there.
Yeah, most do meet in person, but there are a few, and then there are emergency times where we will.
That's fine,
we will
emergency
be-
times would be one thing, but,
Mhm,
yeah, there are some boards, some important boards that still meet in Zoom, so,
mhm.
I would encourage them to really think about,
In person.
in person.
Can I say something about that real quick? Because I've seen other towns around, I think Hingham does it, where they do it hybrid. It is live, but people can Zoom in if they can't attend, right? So, because it's the other side too,
That'd be
right?
great.
And I
It's
think.
even a better idea, Joe.
But I think
Yeah.
something, figuring that out with
Yeah.
Janet and maybe Judy, or, I don't, these screens are new, look like they could be
Yeah.
used for something.
But when you do go hybrid, you're limiting to probably 1 or 2 rooms. I think the high school might have it, and this may be able to function.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
So then
the
now-
upstairs rooms,
Yeah.
right.
Mhm. So, Jerry?
All right, so 2 things, and I'm not trying to open up a big can of worms, so we're gonna put them right out there on the table, because that's how we roll. Number one, when this most recent election was over, one of the issues that came up that I thought we were all on board with addressing, and there are probably reasons why we can't, I would just like to know, either know those reasons, or maybe we, when Jen gets on board, we try to put these on the agenda as soon as possible. And the first one is removing the telephone poles at XYZ Street, and if you look at Google Maps, it goes right over to L Street and M Streets. You know, that entire property it's a road the width of Beach Ave, and it stretches right across, and I don't see any reason why, you know, that road's not open, but that's one thing. Second one is, and I was approached by a constituent, I did reach out to Greg on this, Beach Ave, and I know Chief Dunn is aware of this as well and has responded. I know this is in the works, and my assumption is there is a process to this whole thing. But again, I just want to throw it out there that citizens are seeing people, too many close calls at Beach Ave from A Street to L Street. If you go through that road on a very busy day, and I know the area well because my mom's on E Street, I grew up on E Street, so if you get to the top of E Street, as an example, you cannot take a right, you cannot take a left if there is a car coming in the opposite direction. The road's not wide enough. All right, so I mean, just to start with, that is kind of a red flag that says, you know, it's fine in the winter and fall when there's minimal traffic, but it possibly might be too narrow for a two-way street. I don't know, I'm not a traffic engineer, right? But then when the ramp was added at the corner of A Street, it really exacerbated the problem. I mean, there's just a massive bottleneck there. And now you throw in ice cream trucks, and you throw in kids pulling carts, and you know, and then traffic and people on bikes, and this is what people are seeing, you know? So as cars are trying to get by, they're maybe going a little too quickly, trying to get around people, so. To me, it's a big safety concern. I don't know the process, so again, we don't have to speak to it now, but maybe we should throw it on the agenda as.
Chief, go
I
ahead.
can go over the process a little bit. I submit a recommendation, actually myself and the Chief Russo worked on something several months ago, and it was decided that we'd wait till the fall to present it. I live in the Alphabets also, on Oceanside, on F Street, and you're absolutely right. And it's not just the cars, and it's year-round. People are walking and biking, and they, for some reason, think it's a walk path, and they're out in the middle of the road, and vehicles can't get around each
No
other coming
sidewalk.
both ways.
Yep.
So there is a presentation ready to go to the board. It's just a matter of, it's now the middle of July. It's just a matter of when you'd want to hear it
So,
presented to you.
question to that is, you know, and again, I go back to what we just accomplished now in the last 2 weeks, right? We can get things done quickly if we have to. I understand.
And don't forget, you're gonna have to install numerous do not enter signs, one-way signs.
This
and
is,
there's,
this is what I'm getting to, is this, there's probably a lot of signage that has to go in to really put this into effect.
And educating the public, because many generations are used to it being a two-way road.
Yeah.
If you decided as you are the traffic authority, so what I was getting to is, we'll make a recommendation to you as a traffic authority, and then you'll decide if you think it should be one way or not. We did the same thing over on Kadish a couple of years ago,
Someone told me that.
and
I
it's
haven't-
it's working well over there, it has worked well over there. So it'll be similar to that, the recommendation, I am recommending, it's no secret, I'm recommending it become a one-way road. But it would have to come through you after my presentation and public comment, and then we move forward. For the other item, that is not a recognized state road. It is not a road by definition, by measurement. We're gonna recommend something regarding the poles, but if you wanted to make it a town road, there'll be a whole, correct, Jim? A whole process to go through, because it is not a town road. It's a railroad bed, it's not
Gotcha.
measured to be a road, it's made of gravel and dirt. I mean, you can have an unimproved road, but that's a whole different process you have to go through with the state to get that done, from your level moving up. But not saying it can't be done, but there is a much more detailed process how to go about that.
Chief, if we were to, you know, if my instincts are correct, and this is, and I've seen it, and you live there as well, so you've seen it, and this person saw a close call, you know, how quickly could we get it done if we had to? I mean, it's summertime.
Well, the signage, we could, you know, it's a matter of ordering them and getting them in, I'd say within a couple of weeks. The problem, not problem, but the big thing would be also educating the public to it becoming.
Yeah,
one
so
way.
that's my question to you guys, is, you know, it sounds like, again, it's our decision, right? We make this call.
If I could, it would have to go to a public hearing,
Yeah,
correct?
that was my
So
question.
it's an advertised public hearing. You have to listen to what they have to say, then make your decision based on all his safety recommendations and Chief Russo's, so
Sure.
it's a big
So,
It's bigger than one meeting. I know, he had mentioned like an emergency approach to it. Is there signage that you could put up?
No,
Yeah,
no,
same.
no, it has to go through a public hearing process.
So if the, in times of an emergency, depending on how severe the emergency is, you act and worry about filling in the dots and the things afterwards. But on something like this, it sounds like, you know, you do have the time to have a public hearing, because you want to get the public's acceptance on it, and that's also, as you're saying, educate the public. We can check to see if a formal public hearing is required, or how much notice must be given. I know the board changed on Kadish Avenue, V Street area. They changed that from being a two-way to a one-way. You can see what the process was that was followed on that. But I think
We do, I mean, during the storms when we plow, we make Bay Street one way. Because the plows cannot get through there, you know, to plow. So that would be an emergency type situation where we'd make a road one way. That has not been, and has been historically a two-way road. But I think if the process gets started, I think it can move fairly quickly after we find out about a public hearing.
I guess there's no like slow down signage that you maybe.
Oh, yeah, we could put
Yeah, I
signage up
think
for slow
that's-
down. We have a bunch of
but that-
signage at A Street saying no drop off, no
Yeah.
parking, no, people just, I stopped actually yesterday, there was a person standing right by the sign that said no unloading or loading with their stuff waiting to
Yeah,
load the car.
And I think they mean slow down means go faster.
Yeah, I mean,
You know, so
no, I
in-
mean, we have plenty of signage we could put up
Yeah.
towards that. I thought you meant
Yeah.
making it a one-way.
No, one way I know is a different one,
Oh, yeah, no,
but
we
where
could put up
Jerry's
plenty
talking
of slow
about,
traffic
So-
and mind your speed and, sure.
yeah, let's just back up for a second. So, public hearing, would the next select board meeting be considered a public hearing? Or is that a separate meeting altogether? And could we do that next week as an example, if we had to? I'm not saying we have to, I'm just asking the question.
I think we have to see what the process under the law
Okay.
that is used to do it, as to how much notice, if in fact there is, you are the traffic commissioners, you have certain authority as traffic commissioners.
That's what I was told.
Hmm?
That's what I was told, right? We're the traffic commissioners.
Yeah.
No, you are.
And we've got a big traffic issue here. And it sounds like, I'm just not understanding exactly, and it sounds like you might look into it for us and let us know, hey, this, if you really want to proceed quickly, you could do it as soon as, you know, next week, and then in the select board meeting the following week, you could put it into place.
Yeah, you know, if the board wants me to, I'll look into what with the chief, who is very familiar with the road changes and whatnot. I wasn't involved in the road change on Kadish Ave, but we can look into what needs to be done and what the process is. I don't know that it could be done in time for next week, but if there's no legal sometimes public hearings require advertised notice or notice to abutters to some change. You know, we have to look into see about that. If there's no notice requirement and you wanna put it on the agenda for your next meeting or a special meeting, you know, you could do that if there's no notice or prerequisite requirement for it.
Fantastic. And in the meantime, like Greg kind of alluded to, if we can think of any measures to try to help, and again, just on busy days, peak hours, really. Maybe if you have we don't have any more bike offices, right, during the summer, or do we?
Not
not
personally,
enough,
no.
it's, no, and signage, you gotta be, it has to be up in the air, it can't be on the road.
No,
There's,
it'll
you
be up
know.
on the poles, yeah.
Maybe temporary signage for the
And
time,
if you
for the
could,
short
like,
term.
the reason we didn't bring it forward too quick in the middle of the summer was not wanting to implement a major change if it
Right,
goes
that's
forward
how it's
in the
explained,
middle of
yeah.
the summer. That's kinda why it was pushed towards, you know, after the summer.
Again, what are your thoughts? You guys might not know the area as well as I do, but, you know, the only concern and the main concern is, you know, and is a little kid running out into the street and there's just too much stuff going on and something happens, you know, is the town liable for that?
I just think what the chief said about educating people, it's gonna take a little time.
It is, yeah,
Mhm.
it is.
There's a learning curve there.
Yeah, and the road has been that same way. I think I told you the other day, it's been there since we were kids. The
Yeah.
same situation. Maybe we've gotten very lucky.
Can I tell you this, when I ran for selectman 30 years ago, that was an issue. I'm not kidding you, I
There's a lot of-
remembered, I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, but that was an issue 30 years ago.
I
It
believe
was
no
the
one's-
ice cream trucks, it was the dunes were overcrowding the street, it was an issue.
In 30
Yep.
years, it hasn't been fixed
Yep, no, you're right.
until now.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, we started that discussion, what, 3 years ago? Yes. Yeah. All right, so we,
I would just suggest that you have some, at least one public meeting.
Oh,
Oh, definitely.
Otherwise, neighbors will be very upset. And
Absolutely,
there are a
yeah.
lot of summer residents there, so you may want to try to have that meeting before when the summer residents leave.
We did have a public meeting for Kadish when we did it.
yeah,
There was a public meeting that night here, the night that I made my recommendation. They also had the public invited. Well, I don't know if they required a public hearing, but they did have a public meeting to talk about it.
That was a separate standalone meeting just for that one.
I
No,
think,
it's
no, it was
just-
on the
it's part-
agenda.
it's an agenda item.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But you were thinking September-ish anyways, correct?
yes.
Yeah, so I mean, if we left it there, we'd be fine. You know,
So
and
it's up to whatever-
in the meantime, you can try some safety measures.
Yes.
We need to find out, though, if we have to have a public
Right,
hearing
he's-
and if abutters have to be notified.
Mhm.
Right.
Those are the two questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I'll make a motion to see if we can ask town council to see what's involved in a general sense.
Mhm.
And if we wanted to act very quickly, how much it can be compressed, and how quickly could we implement it? Or does it make more sense to let it sit till September when the chief has already, the ball's kind of already in motion, and that might make more sense.
Do we need to make a motion on that, or you
No,
just, yeah?
I could take it as a
Yeah.
request,
I think
certainly.
educating the people.
We can, I'll look at stuff
Yeah,
tomorrow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know you have a book, I think, of all the
All right, with that said, everyone
things
good?
that the board has done on.
All right, so we do have a need to go into executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel and conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel regarding an employment agreement with the town manager designee. So I move to go into executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel. Move to go into executive session to comply with or act under the authority of the attorney-client privilege. Move to go into executive session to consult with legal counsel and obtain legal advice pursuant to the attorney-client privilege, and not to reconvene in open session.
Second.
And you already said the topic was gonna be the town.
Yeah,
manager.
that was the first one.
Yeah.
All right, so, Jason, if you could start us off.
Excuse myself, because I don't think I should be involved in negotiating my
Yes,
boss's
aye.
contract.
Aye, Gray.
McCarthy, aye.
What do you think?
Aye?
All right, thank you. Good night, everybody.